Hey, it's Chris with Never Enough Outdoors, and today I wanted to discuss the SPINCAST reel. This is not something that a lot of professionals use for catching big fish. It's something that will hold light line. I usually keep a 2 to 6 pound test on here, and I usually use it for live bait like a worm on a small hook or a cricket, and I have a bobber on it, or I fish off the bottom, but I'll throw it out and just leave it and wait on a fish to bite it. When the bobber goes down or the line gets tight, I'll know I've got something on and I can reel it in. So let's go inside and discuss some parts of this, and then we'll get into throwing it.
All right, so I'm at my table, and here is the SPINCAST reel. There's not a lot of parts to this reel. It's most of it's encased in the housing here. Most of them that you see are right hand retrieve. You retrieve with your right hand. You can cast with your left or cast with your right. You may find some that are left hand retrieve, but most of them are right. The line is actually twisted sideways like a spinning reel, but not like a bait caster. A bait caster is going forward, and this one's going sideways. To get to the line, you would unscrew this top here. And you can see the line goes underneath this metal piece, and it's round around the spool. If you wanted to get all your line off, you would just have to pull it all off, and then there's usually a little tab in here, and there it is right there. To put your line on, you can tie a little knot around that, and basically just put the top back on, or make a lap around here and put the top back on, and as you reel in new line, the line will go up under here to spool on. So I'm going to put this back on. Most of the time, by the time I need to replace line, I've about wore out my reel. I usually don't replace line on these very often, but I use usually around 4 pound test, maybe 6 pound, and I'm usually just fishing with a bobber or fishing off the bottom with a worm to catch small fish. You usually don't want to put anything heavy on here. It'll take up a lot of space and you won't be able to put as much on it, or it might cause issues with the reel when you're casting. Most of these reels have a drag, and it's usually a dial like this one. So there's a plus sign here and a minus sign here. So obviously the less, if I go minus, it takes away drag, and so my line will be able to be pulled out. If I've got a big fish on, it'll give me some drag, so it's not going to break my line, especially with this light line. But if I want to tighten it up, it'll be tighter. It won't allow me to pull it out as much. So that's what your drag's for. And then you have a button here. The button releases the spool if you need to pull some line out, or if you're about to cast it. And when you reel, this button will pop back out, and it won't be able to be pulled out anymore, and you can reel your line in. And basically, when you cast, you push the button and you hold it in until you are about to throw it. And when you get above your head, you want to release the button, and the weight of your weight or line or lure will just sling it out. Now you see this weight here, I've got this tied on here to mimic about how much weight I would have at the end of this line if I were fishing. Between the weight of my bobber and my little weights that I've got tied on, and then my hook and the bait, the worm or the cricket or whatever, would be about as heavy as this weight I've got here. So I'm going to throw this out in the yard to show you how you can practice in your yard, and I'm going to use this weight so that when I reel it back in, it's not going to hook on it. It's going to snag the ground and either not be able to be reeled in, or damage my hook or my lure or whatever I'm fishing with. So I'm going to use a weight to practice with. But but this weight is about as heavy as I would throw something with this reel. You just need to get your line tight, leave your line hanging about a few inches off the end of your rod, and you want to push the button and just sling it. Just pick it up, just put it behind you like you're throwing a baseball and throw it. And aim at stuff. You throw it as hard as you want to throw it, as far as you want to throw it. It's going to be more of a loop than a straight line. Like a baitcaster is more of a straight line. And y'all check out my baitcaster throwing video where I show how to throw a baitcaster. I've got another video that shows how to get backlash out. I'll put those videos in the description. You're not going to get much backlash with this. If anything, you might get a little mess inside of this box that you've got to take off and fix, but these reels really have little to no issues when you're casting. Sometimes you leave your line on here for so long. See how that's circled? It causes an issue when you try to go reel it back in, but plenty of people keep these forever and they restring them all the time and they fish with them all the time, depending on your type of fishing. So let's go outside and I'll show you how to cast this thing. It's very easy. And a lot of kids learn on this type of reel. I learned on this type of reel. And a lot of kids' fishing poles have this type of reel. But there's plenty of full-size fishing rods like this one here that have this type of reel. One thing you want to make sure the rod has is this little trigger so that you can put your finger on it so when you cast, you don't actually sling the rod out into the lake. This trigger is helpful. I've seen a lot of people with rods that don't have this trigger on it, and when they cast, there's nothing to really, keep it from sliding out of their hand, and they'll throw the rod right out into the water. My kids, if they don't have their finger around this thing, they're slinging it out in the water. So that's an important feature of a rod to go with this reel. It's a lot like a baitcaster, but it's used for much less heavy of line, and you're going to be catching, for the most part, you're trying to catch much smaller fish. Now, you can catch big fish on it, but you got to have the right size line, and you got to have your drag set up correctly and, to accommodate such a big fish. But it's mainly meant for fishing for smaller fish. Most people that use it are looking to catch brim and small bass and crappie and other small fish. So let's go outside and I'll show you how to throw it. All right, I'm outside and I wanted to show you a common mistake. My kids do this all the time. They'll be running with this rod and they'll be bouncing and their weight will get wrapped around the end of their rod. And when they go to cast, it won't go anywhere. It'll be stuck on the end of their rod. So make sure that your line is not tangled up on the end of your rod. But you want to let it hang down about a few inches. Make sure your rod's not twisted sideways like this one is. Hold the button in really hard, and when you cast it, when you sling it over your head, you release the button and it will sling the bait. But it's just like a baseball. When you would release the baseball is when you release the button. I'm using two hands. You don't have to. You can use one hand. Make sure you got your finger on that trigger so it doesn't sling it away. So again, press the button and reach behind your head, and when you get ready to let go, just release the button and it'll throw your line. I never have a lot of accuracy with this thing, especially if it's a little windy. It's gonna go where it wants to go, but you can change your weight around to help you with accuracy. But it's that simple. See, I've got my hand here holding my line while I reel it in. I always do that just so my line's tight, not loose. Especially if I were to let some line out, get it kind of loose like that, I want to hold my hand on it so that it's tight when I go to reel it in. Especially, sometimes you've got to make it tight or it won't reel in. If it's kind of kinked up and you go to reel it, sometimes it won't reel in. But again, push the button, hold it in, and let go when you're ready to cast it. When you're ready for it to sling, and it will sling out into the water. Reel it back in. I'm gonna do a side view so you can see me throwing this from the side. It's very simple.
again, just push your button and don't let go of it. Just hold it in real tight and cast it. It's very simple. This is a good thing you can teach a kid how to do. Get them started early so that they understand the concept of fishing, so they learn how to throw a rod as a kid, and the other rods will be much easier when they move up to a different type of rod. When they go to a spinning reel or even a bait caster, fishing will make more sense to them because they'll start at an early age. A lot of kids don't like to fish because they don't know how to cast. This is an easy thing to buy them so they can learn how to do it. And this is not just for kids, this is for adults, women, men, anything, especially if you're fishing with light stuff. I can't throw light stuff with my bait caster. I have to have something like this or a spinning reel. So this is something you can use for your light stuff. You don't have to have a spinning reel. You can use one of these. Again, push the button, hold it in tight. If you let go, it's going to drop. You got to hold it tight, and just about right here you would let go to cast it. About right there. So I'm gonna do a little loop-de-loop and cast out to the lake. Now again, I'm doing this in my backyard. You can try this in your backyard and practice. You practice a lot in your backyard. You don't have to go to the lake to practice. You can do this in your backyard and get good at it. When you go to the lake, you can concentrate on your fishing and not learning. You can learn at home and then go perfect your fishing and your casting at the lake. So again, I'm gonna do it one more time. Again, just hold the button in, hold it tight, and release it. Just gonna throw it out into the lake and reel it back in. It's that simple. It's very easy to do. There's no, you won't have a lot of issues with a rod like this or a reel. It's very simple. So I hope you'll take time to learn how to throw this rod. Check out my other videos of how to throw a bait caster, and then check out my video that shows how to get backlash out real quick so you can get back to fishing. So thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.